All right, hello. My name is Madeline O'Brien, and I am a second-year student in the Public Administration program here at Penn. And today, I will be presenting on my capstone topic, What's in a Degree? How Graduate Programs Shape Career Decision-Making. I want you to start out by thinking of the earliest days of your graduate school career. Making the decision to go to school, filling out your personal statement, taking a walk on campus on Accepted Students Day. What motivated you to make an investment in higher education? Regardless of what our individual motivations may be, there's no doubt that education speaks to our desire to make a positive impact on the world. Looking at these advertisements for graduate programs around the country, certain words stand out. Change, good, history, power, all speak to our desire to make an impact on the world around us. But are universities giving students the resources they need to go into the public sector following their graduate careers? In the case of public administration and public policy students, this has been shown not to be the case. The graph in front of you comes from a study of 200 Harvard Kennedy School Masters of Public Policy students. Students were asked about their planned sector of work at the beginning of their career program and again at the end of their graduate program. As you can see, students started school with an interest in government and nonprofit work, and when they ended school, this interest had fallen and been replaced with an increase in interest in the private sector. This study has been repeated and confirmed throughout the public administration literature. Now, it would be easy to blame the decline in interest in public sector work on structural problems that are inherent to the public sector. When students on the previous slide were asked why their interest in the public sector had decreased, they cited value on private sector skill sets, the lack of interesting work in the government, and skepticism about working for the public sector. And of course, public servants haven't had an easy time lately. Bureaucratic hiring practices, outdated technology, and lower pay scales, not to mention the looming threats of government shutdowns and the popularity of our president, have made public sector work seem less attractive on the face. But what if the state of the public sector isn't the whole story? Perhaps if universities knew about the motivations of students pursuing graduate study and were able to shift resources based on cost, attractiveness of government, or public sector motivation, they'd be able to better prepare students to pursue this kind of work. This is the question that I want to answer in my capstone study. So our first step, which is currently our current step, was to complete a survey of 200 students across graduate schools and year of graduate study. Students self-selected into the study, which was distributed via the internet and interpersonal networks, based on a self-described interest in public service. We wanted to study how 4 factors, from application to graduation, were impacting how students' career motivations changed throughout graduate study. Please note that all findings represented in this PowerPoint are preliminary, as the survey technically closes today. First, we wanted to look at public service motivation, how students' individual outlook on the world shape their education and career choices. Our first preliminary finding was that while students responded positively to public service in the abstract, for instance, if they're asked questions like, I have a duty to commit myself to public work, they were much less likely to be positive when asked if they would make personal sacrifices in terms of time or money to work in a public sector career. Next, using government as a litmus test for the public sector as a whole, we wanted to see how students' views on our largest public institutions influence their perception of public work. Here, students were overwhelmingly likely to rate government as more effective than nonprofits or the private sector when it came to solving major social problems. However, students were much more ambivalent when asked if the government was able to spend their tax dollars responsibly. This shows a fundamental discord between students' inherent beliefs that the public sector has the ability to solve problems and their trust that they'll actually be able to carry that out in practice. Of course, cost is a huge consideration when making a commitment to higher education. However, we were curious to see how students define cost. If it was solely in terms of dollars and cents, where the private sector definitely has an advantage, or if it was in terms of more soft skills, such as flexibility, work-life balance, or organizational mission, where it's easier for the public sector to compete. Surprisingly, we found that organization mission is still by far the #1 consideration for public service when considering jobs, regardless of their level of loans or financial obligation. This shows that students are willing to make financial sacrifice in order to pursue public good, but only if they find an organization that is the right fit. Lastly, we wanted to look at university investment, how institutional investment in academic programming, career programming, and other services on campus impacts students' decision-making throughout their career. This is the area of the survey that has the most room to develop, as we plan to break out students based on their specific graduate program once the analysis begins. For now, our preliminary findings show that students report having the resources they need to succeed academically, but are less likely to express that same support for their career program. Given that the public sector has a number of factors such as bureaucratic hiring processes and strict deadlines, it's very important that students have career programming in order to create a pipeline for them to pursue public sector work. Of course, every study has limitations. Our first limitation was the recruitment of professional students, such as law, business, and medical students, to counter high response rates we received from PhDs, MPAs, and Masters of Social Work. It's unclear whether this limitation was due to recruitment strategy or if it's because professional students don't have an interest in pursuing public work. In the final week of our recruitment, we've changed our strategy a little bit, and we'll figure out whether or not recruitment is due to our recruitment issues or to interests of these students. Similarly, in the early stages, it was a challenge to find concrete correlations in the data when students were split into smaller groups by their graduate program or year of study. This is another issue that we hope to confront during the data analysis phase. In terms of next steps, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be using our programming analysis to perform cross-tabulations and see how students responded in patterns in response to our 4 variables. We'll also be doing qualitative interviews with 5 to 10 survey respondents to further understand their personal motivation and experience in their specific graduate programs. And lastly, the goal of this piece is to put together a set of recommendations for universities to help them support students who are pursuing public sector work. Ultimately, the goal of our study is to make sure that the promises universities presented on the first slide are reflected in institutions where students can work in the future. If universities are able to prepare students with the tools and skill sets they need to work in the public sector, they will have truly fulfilled their promise to help students change the world. Thank you.